Hello everyone and welcome to our very last episode of Safari Mack Explores North America. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, you heard me say it correct, folks. This is our very last episode of our first tour in North America. So today we're going to head back to the Aleutian Islands in southern Alaska and hang out with a multi-ton mammal that we gladly call the walrus, otherwise known by their Latin name of Audobinus rosmaris. So if you're ready, let's take the plunge into the frigid water with these creatures. But as always, before we begin, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Check out my Facebook page on content on conservation. And finally, if there's an animal that you want me to do in the future, or if you have a question about animals, all you gotta do is just send me an email, which you will always find my address down in my description below. But if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's begin with its family and its evolution. Now, in terms of family members, we've actually already met a member already. Truthfully, we've met a few. But here's the more obvious member. Can you everybody remember Mr. California Sea Lion when we were in San Francisco at Pier 39? Well, as you can see, the walrus is a member of the pinniped family, or the seals and sea lions. And here's just a quick reminder as to the differences. Seals have ear holes and use their front flippers to get around on land, as well as their bellies to kind of like flop around on the land instead of their back legs, which would be useless for walking on land but perfect for swimming. Unlike the sea lions, they have no ear holes but external ear flaps, and they're able to use their back flippers to walk on the land as well as perfectly use them for swimming. So the walrus is the only member of the Audobinidae family that actually has has ear holes, no external ear, and can't use their back flippers. But they are the only member of this group because of those gigantic two tusk-like teeth, which has often given their Greek name of tooth-walking seahorse. Now I know, how is that considered to be a seahorse? I don't know. But the Greeks came up with these different words, and we just translated them into these names. Now here's an even wilder thing for you all. The seals and sea lions, including the walrus, their closest living cousins on land are actually bears. So it's thought that 30.6 million to 23 million years ago, that the seals and sea lions originated from these early mustelid-like animals that eventually, as time progressed, would evolve to be more at home in the water as well as spending time on the land. So today the world recognizes only two subspecies, the Atlantic walrus, which is known as Audobinus rosmaris, and the Pacific walrus, known as Audobinus rosmaris divergens. And since we are still on the west coast, we're just going to focus on Pacific walrus. So now let's get into their habitat, lifestyle, and their reproduction. So their habitat, basically, they live in areas where they live in a kind of continental shelf, but where they can access the benthic environment, or the kind of like the deeper ocean bit of the sea floor, where they can find their food, as well as hang out on land, a little bit on land, but they would really prefer to be out on the sea ice, where they'll hang out on ice floes that are strong enough to hold their weight. So here you can see just a little bit on the Aleutian Islands. They're just a little bit along here within Bristol Bay, and during the summer they will head to the Chukchi Sea to hang out and live out their lives during the winter, and then usually during the summer they would come out into the Bristol Bay area. So here you can see, you can actually, for sightseeing, you can actually go to this little area called Mack to hang out and look for walruses if you're sightseeing. So like I said, during the summer they'll try to head out they will go to the land if they can avoid it though, but most of the time they prefer to hang out on the ice floes. So walruses are hang out in single-sexed groups. So males will hang out in one group, with the larger groups being that of males, and females with their young live in those groups. So, and they will only come together during the times when they're kind of mingling, but during that time, they're just trying to keep out of each other's way and mind their own business, and usually just try to live out their lives as they can, especially in crowded conditions. Now, when it comes time for pregnancy, so here's how the breeding ritual begins. So males are known as singing, but they're not singing the blues and they're not singing romantics, but they have a deep kind of gurgling, cracking like sound that they produce in their throats, and they can sing for hours, and I mean hours, just to woo the females long enough to go into the water and to do the courtship. So yeah, for the females though, until the males are worth listening, they can hold out for as long as possible until there's that one male that's still trying to hold out for that special female. So when she finally gets wooed, after 15 to 16 month pregnation, she will give birth usually to a single pup, and she will nurse this baby for up to a year. But the pups themselves can spend up to 5 years with their moms. Even as they start to get ready to have another pup, they'll stay and hang out for a little bit, so there's something wrong with that. Now let's get into their diet and their foraging style. So, if there's one thing that you can never rely on, it's seeing a walrus feed alone. That just doesn't work. If one member of the herd gets hungry, the whole herd falls after. It's just how they are. Nobody knows why. I think it's just a mentality of sticking together and that there's safety in numbers. So, walruses will eat shrimp, crabs, sea cucumbers, and many other different marine life. But of course, they're also the biggest consumers of bivalves or shellfish or this kind of mollusk. So if we remember, mollusk is basically the animal that it's known as stomach foot. So they'll also eat octopus, but most of the time they would love to eat clams, oysters, whatever bivalves they can eat. In fact, a single walrus could eat around 4,000 clams in one sitting. For youngsters, as they're learning to feed, it'll take them years to master the walrus style of clamming, so to speak. Basically, this is how it works. First, they're snuffling the ground with their huge big whiskers. They're snuffling the ground looking for buried bivalves. Then, once they find it with their mouths and their specialized tongue, they blast open the shell with a snort and then suck out the meat. Kind of like a vacuum cleaner, as they do have a pretty powerful suction. Of course, you gotta catch these guys. You gotta catch them because they're not all bivalves are gonna stay still. They're gonna run. If they can, of course. Finally, let's end today's part 1 episode with their influence in human culture. So, the Inuits, as well as the other people that live close to walruses, such as those in Alaska and of the Arctic, they have hunted walruses for centuries, using their tusks to carve beautiful art pieces or make some kind of tools out of them. Even their meat, of course, is good eating, and they've even had their leather be turned into some for clothing and others into parkas. Now, of course, we also probably know Lewis Carroll, who was a mathematician that used a literary mind. He came up with the idea of Alice learning from the characters Tweedledee and Tweedledum the story about the walrus and the carpenter that trick a bunch of oysters into following them, and of course they end up eating them and then feel remorse later. And then, of course, I'm not going to ignore this, we also know and love the Beatles for their famous song of I Am the Walrus. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I have for today's episode, so be sure to join me next week for part 2 of The Walrus. But until then, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you all out there.